Welcome, Tonya Duncan Ellis, to the Halloween spectacular episode of Middle Grade Ninja. And no, I'm not going to talk like this the whole show because how annoying would that be? Tonya Duncan Ellis, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I
Sound
am good. A little embarrassed for myself with that terrible vampire accent, but
ah,
we're talking Bigfoot. We're talking a little bit of scariness tonight with our middle grade, right?
yes, it's that spooky time of year,
Usually,
Halloween.
I start every episode. I never summarize anybody's biography, and I never summarize anybody's book because I will make a mess out of both. So the best place to start is always if you would tell esteemed audience just a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, I am a middle grade children's author from Houston, Texas, or I reside in Houston. I'm the author of the Sophie Washington series for children ages 8 to 12. It's an 11 book series. And it's about an African American girl and her diverse group of friends who live in the suburbs of Houston and chronicles all their adventures. And they deal with common issues seen to kids that age, like standing up to bullies, navigating friendships, managing homework. But they have a Texas twist because since Sophie lives in Houston, she sees alligators in the neighborhood. She goes to the rodeo. They see wild boar running through the neighborhood. So it captures a flavor of life here in Houston, Texas.
Are you frequently seeing alligators there in Houston?
I haven't seen one in the past 5 or 6 months, but we do have alligators in my community. And actually, 3 weeks ago, I've become an avid biker since COVID, riding bikes with some friends. And there's an area we ride through that is it's just torn up with from pigs rooting through the area. And then I saw this huge boar that was dead on the side of the road, maybe like a morning after I had been riding in that area. And they go hog wild. They're just out there. So you see just so many interesting things. I'm originally from Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, and I've lived here 17 years. So I've just was amazed with all the different things you see living in this part of the country.
Well, it's good that you're riding with friends if there are alligators by the side of the road.
Well,
Might grab you right
those
off
are boar. Those are boar. Actually, yeah, there are alligators in some of the waterways. Yeah. Yeah, I would not go by myself in those areas.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the boar had met an inn by an alligator.
He may have. Hey, some of them may have gotten eaten.
Well, there we go. I think we've got Sophie Washington's next adventure sorted.
Yeah. Yes.
what lots of questions to ask you about your background because I know you've got a background in journalism before you came to fiction. Is that right?
Yes. Well, if you want to go way back to when I started or became
Sure,
interested
chapter
in
one,
writing.
I'm bored.
Yeah.
Wherever you want to start.
Well, as a middle grader like Sophie, when I was about 10 years old, the age of my main character, I decided that I wanted to become a writer when I won a contest at my school. It was called Young Authors, where you had to write and illustrate your own book. And my book was about Mr. Peanut. Now, to date myself, I don't remember too many of the other details, but it won first prize, and that got me excited about writing. And I had always loved to read from the time that I could read. I read all the time. My mother would take me to the library once a week, and I'd come back with a bag of books, devour them, and go back and get more. So, but when I won that writing contest, I got more interested in that. And when I was a teenager, when I was, I think, about 14 years old, an article I wrote was published in my hometown newspaper in Louisville. And it was a column called Your View. And it was about record ratings, putting record ratings on records at the time. It was my opinion. And then I got paid my first paycheck, $25, and my picture was in the paper. So that got me even more excited. And then I went to college. I attended Center College in Kentucky, in Danville, Kentucky. And I knew going in that I wanted to be a journalist. So I had internships in the summer. I got a Pulliam. You're from Indiana, aren't you? I got the Pulliam Fellowship in Journalism as when I was a senior. So I don't know if they have that anymore, but it was in Indianapolis. So I got to work there in the summer. And I
That is a
started
big
at Java's
deal and
Jones.
extremely competitive for people that don't know. That's tremendous.
Okay, so I was really on that path to being a reporter, and I worked for a year at a newspaper in South Carolina. And I had interned there as well the summer before I did the Pulliam Fellowship. So, but when I went there, I was a business reporter, and my heart had been in doing more feature stories, because when I was in Indiana working for the Indianapolis Star that summer, I did a feature on homeless people in the area, and I found a place they lived called the Jungle. And that was really exciting to me to do those kind of human interest type stories. But when I got to Anderson, they had me doing more hard news stories and it was a small town, so there may be what they call fatality. Whenever anyone died, you had to go to their home, interview their family, especially when they were young people. So I would be out going to someone. I remember one mother, her daughter had just been killed in a car accident. And, here I am. And actually on my way there, my car broke down. And some of their family members helped me. People helped me. And it turned out they were the family members of this person that I'm going to interview whose daughter had died. So after a while, and then there was a hurricane that year, I'm out in the storm, murders on the loose, you're out. And I said, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. I love to write, but I wasn't really thrilled with that. And then they had me doing business stories. And so I got interested in business as well, in marketing. And I was just saying, I'm not sure if I want to continue this, because I wasn't happy with the things that I was writing, and I wasn't getting paid very much either. And so then I decided to go back to school and got MBA degree at Washington University in St. Louis. So, and from there I worked in corporate America a while in marketing. My degree was a marketing concentration. And I still loved writing even then. And I would always be the one who would do the journals, like the training manuals, or writing up any kind of thing that we had to do. I always volunteered to do that. And I got married a few years after that. And I started writing for community magazines and things, because my husband and I moved to the Houston area. And there's a magazine called Sugarland Magazine that does feature articles about local celebrities, like Clutch, the Rockets bear for the Houston Rockets team. And there's one woman named Crystal Stewart who was Miss USA, and she's from the area where I live. So I'd get to meet people like that, Texans football players. So that was really fun. I did that for about 10 years, writing freelance for them. They owned several magazines. So, and I had my kids, so that was easy for me. I could do that from home. And then when my kids got older, I would read. I always read to them, but we started reading little chapter books like my Sophie Washington series. And I noticed that few of them, really none of, maybe one or two, but very few had characters of color. And I said, oh, I could write something like this. This would be fun. And I wanted to, by then we had moved to Houston, and I had been describing to you earlier, the wild boar, the alligators, and all the things that I would see here. And I said, this would be really cool to write a story about the different things that go on here in our area, and also have some kids of color, because Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the United States. And we're the fourth largest, but that's something that struck me when I moved here. And I've lived in many different places, and here I can walk into a Panera Bread and see Muslim people, Hispanic, Black, white, Asian. It's really a true melting pot. So I wanted to show that in my books as well. And so I really one day just said, I want to write. And that had always been a dream of mine too, to write my own book. And I said, this would be a really fun series. So I just sat down and kind of sketched out what the different books would be about. And I modeled them after a book series called Ready Freddy. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I haven't read it. I've seen it.
Okay. Those were books that I read with my kids, and they were really cute little books. And I liked the illustrations and things in them. and my kids enjoyed those. So, and they would have, each one would have a different topic. Like he might be in the school play, or he would be standing up to a bully or something like that. So they were kind of modeled, I kind of modeled them after that. And I started with Queen of the Bee, the first book that you are well familiar with.
Listen to you read it for free on YouTube, which esteemed audience can seek out and hear as well.
Yes. So the Queen of the Bee has Sophie competing in a spelling bee against a boy that she calls Mr. Know-It-All. And that was based on my experiences participating in spelling bees with my own kids. Or I was a judge of a spelling bee, and they were spelling bee champs that I worked with. So that was the first one. And then I did the Snitch, and that was about Sophie standing up to the school bully. And then from there, they just, I shared them, because I'm an independent author, with some librarian friend, or one librarian friend. And she said, these are really something, you know, I think these are really appealing. And what she said that they filled a niche because they had an African-American protagonist that was in a two-family situation, and that they kind of focused on more normal not that anything is abnormal, but just regular everyday activities of children. Because a lot of the books you'll see that feature the African-American characters may have them in maybe a downtrodden situation, or they deal with more historical issues. So this was kind of a contemporary story that showed the African-American girl living and or going through common problems that kids face, but that she was a star. And so that really is my journey, I guess, with the series that started out with the first book, then I did the second, and then I did Things You Didn't Know About Sophie, has her not telling the truth, going through ups and downs as she learns to be true to herself. And once I did that one, and then I got the illustrator that I have who's illustrated these books. I had some different illustrators for my initial books, first two. And then they really started taking off. And I had kind of written these as a gift to my children, because I would even read them to them as bedtime stories when I was writing them to get their feedback. And they'd say, oh, you need more action here. Oh, this is kind of boring. And I said, you know, I really believe in these books. I think that children will enjoy them. And I had done a few school visits, maybe a couple, and had really good, people had really enjoyed them as well. And so I started marketing them heavily in 2018. And since then, I've seen quite a bit of success with them.
Absolutely. You are climbing the charts. You're an Amazon best-selling author. You're a 5-star favorite.
Yes, I'm really excited and what I really love is that I get emails from parents telling me that their children who were reluctant readers are now picking up a book, you know, wanting to read. And that's really what it's all about to me, because I grew up loving to read. I always had a book in my hand, and I still do. And with all the distractions that the kids have nowadays, I'm really excited to be someone that can encourage them to read and learn about different people, different places and things, because reading always opened up the world to me. And it really just expanded my life. When I think I grew up in Kentucky, and when I think back of all the books that I read, that encouraged me to do so many things that I might not have done had I not picked up those books. So I'm happy that I'm playing this small role in the childhood of my readers.
We just went through a lot of your history. I want to break out a couple of those things and ask you some specific questions. But first, I'm going to ask you a dumb question. I'm going to ask it facetiously because I want to hear you talk about the subject. For those listening who maybe aren't familiar with, why is it important that a middle grade book star a character of color doing just normal things, not connected to history or some great significant statement on race overall, but just focused on middle grade activities?
Well, I believe that, well, there's a psychologist named Rudine Sims Bishop who says that, is that her name, Rudine Sims Bishop, I believe. She says that books should be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, meaning that a book should be a mirror in that it reflects yourself back to you. You see yourself in it. A window that it opens up that window and lets you see other people and how they live. And a sliding glass door because it lets you experience different lives and different things. And so if a child doesn't see themselves in that book, they may not relate to it. They may not even want to read. Because what I noticed with mine, I have a daughter and 2 sons. I grew up with books I read, none of them looked like me. I liked Little House on the Prairie, books by Beverly Cleary, Judy Blume, and I love those books and still do. But when I tried to introduce them, especially to my sons, they did not relate to that at all. They didn't want to read them. And so if kids have books with characters that they can even relate to on a day-to-day basis and feel like, yes, that's me, that's the kind of things that I do, that will encourage them to read. And not to say that those books that have the history, the slavery, and those things like that, those are important things that we need to know. But I think that they may not be able to relate. And you want to have, when you read, you want to have that heavy food, that strong food, and also the fun food or the desserts and the fun things. Reading should be fun. And also for those who are not minorities, if the only books they see show African Americans in trauma situations, then that's how they're going to see us as a people as well. And I am a product of my ancestors who were slaves here, but I'm also the product of kings and queens and happy times and good times. So I'm not just someone who's had trauma, because if you look at some of the things out there, if that's all you saw, that may be what you think of when you see an African American. So I think that's important, just to show the full scope of what we are as a people, that an African American child likes to go out and collect frogs or be outside and ride his bike just like any other child. And he may live in different parts of society. Even I want my books to be aspirational as well for some, because Sophie's in a upper middle class neighborhood in Houston, and I want them to see that there's different situations that people can be in, because a lot of the books you see with the African American protagonists show them in situations of struggle, which people of all peoples have struggled, but that's not the only story we have to tell. So I feel like those are some of the reasons it's important. It's important for the African American child to see himself as a hero and see himself as a star of the show for aspirational purposes, and also to show the full range of our existence here in the United States. And it's good for other kids of other races to see that as well.
All of that should be obvious and intuitive, but the history of publishing suggests that no, we better state it. So thank you. That was a wonderful clip that was extremely illuminating, that I hopefully will make clearer for those that haven't seen that. The importance for why we would want to have diverse characters in our literature and part of our conversation. When did you go from wanting to write a book to specifically sitting down and committing to writing, and also when did you decide you wanted to write specifically for children?
Really, it was like a lightning bolt moment, really. I just said to myself, seriously, it was that one day, like I said, I was like, I want to write a book, and if not now, when? And I, that very day, got a journal out and started outlining what this book would be. And I guess it was a gradual process, as I read on a daily basis with my kids, and at bedtime we'd read little stories, and I used to make up stories for them too, actually, and with my nieces and nephews. Like anytime we would have gatherings, I would be making up crazy stories for them. But it was like that somehow that day, it might have been around a New Year's time or something. And I was like thinking up my resolutions. And I told my husband, I said, I want to write a book, and I'm going to write a book. And I'm like, yeah, she can be Sophie Washington. She can do this, she can do that. And I kind of put what she would do in a few books and kind of outline that day. And then I just started writing it obsessively. So my kids were younger then, and I would write whenever I would be waiting for them at different events and things. I would have if I didn't have my laptop, I'd have notebooks and just be writing. I remember my daughter was playing softball, and I'd be in the stands at a practice, not her game. I was watching the game, but I would be writing, and I was like obsessed with finishing that book. And so it took me maybe 6-7 months. These books are all 100-page books, about 100-page long. And so maybe 25,000, 30,000 words. So I finished that one, and, had it edited, and I had to get my own illustrator and things like that. But, so when I did that, then I was working with the librarian and did a few little school visits and things. And then I got the idea for the Snitch, which is the second book in the series about Sophie being bullied. And she and her friends were more afraid of being called tattletales by the other children than telling on the Snitch. And so I wrote that book and went on. It just kind of, then once I started creating this world and came up with these characters, they just keep coming to me, these different ideas of what they could get up to. And also it came because as a mother, I was very involved with what was going on with my children and their friends. And I also was a Sunday school teacher at my church. So I was around children all the time. And I would see the things they would do, and that would inspire me to come up with different scenarios for the characters. And generally I would write early in the mornings. I would get up like 5 in the morning so that I would make sure that I would have that time, 5:30 or 6 a.m. So I'd have the concentrated time each day. And so that's what happened. Then once I had the first 2 books done, it wasn't as difficult for me to complete these other books. That's why there's so many, I guess, in the series, because I've already created my world and the characters. And each book, I generally will introduce 1 or 2 new characters. So those are the new ones. I have to figure out what they're going to be like and what they're going to do. But each one, you have your main Sophie, her best friend, Chloe, and there's a cast of characters, and I know what they're going to do and how they behave.
So how far ahead do you plan going? And you knew there were going to be at least more than one book with Sophie Washington. And by the way, how did you decide Sophie Washington was to be the name of your heroine?
Actually, my daughter's name is Sophia, and Sophie, people used to call her Sophie all the time, and I'd get mad. And I said, why are they calling you that? Why are you letting them call you Sophie? Because she had gone to a new school and everyone was calling her Sophie, and we didn't call her that at home. And I said, okay, we'll just name her Sophie. And I just picked Washington as a common name. And so that's how we came up with that. But
that's fantastic. So you knew the name going in, and you knew that there were going to be more than. Did you have an idea for how many books there were going to be?
No, I really didn't have any idea. And I only had the spelling bee, then the Snitch, and things you didn't know about Sophie. I kind of knew that. And the Gamer is the 3rd book. Her little brother Cole is in all the books, and he plays video games all the time. And so I knew I wanted a book about, it kind of focuses on him and talks about setting limits with playing video games. And then the next book was Hurricane, which that was an inspiration from Hurricane Harvey, because I had planned on writing one. Mission Costa Rica is the 6th book. That's when she goes on a mission trip to Costa Rica. When Hurricane Harvey came, that inspired me to write that based on my own experiences evacuating from Houston and all the trauma that we had. Of course, now that pales in comparison to what's going on now. But at the time, that was really traumatic. I actually was having chest pain when during that time. So that experience inspired me to write that one. And then what?
Did writing about the hurricane in your fictional world, did that help alleviate the chest pain and your anxiety?
And I was more calm about it after, by the time I started writing. But during the actual experience, I actually went to the grocery store. We had waited and we said, because we had been through here during other hurricane times and we had evacuated and our kids were older. And I said, oh, my husband, I said, we're going to just stay here. We're going to ride it out. And the storm, it looked like everything had cleared up and it was sunny and beautiful. And then the rains came and then the storm came and we got flooded in where we couldn't leave the city. And so we're like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And I remember going in the grocery store, and this is a mega grocery store here. Every parking space was filled. The line stretched from the back of the store to the front. And there were police with rifles.
Oh my.
Yeah, and I went, and then I was like scrambling around going, oh, I've got to get food. What am I going to do? And one of my daughter was like, Mom, what are we going to do? And I had my cart filled with food. And then my husband called me and like, come on, we're going to go. We went to his office and stayed in there. And that's actually what Sophie and her family do in the book. But that was just, it was kind of a harrowing experience because you didn't know what was going on. There were people in my neighborhood sitting out, I'm in Texas, so sitting out on their porch with rifles, protecting their property. And
was that special for the hurricane, or is that just average Texas?
I don't see that on a day-to-day, but Texas is a fine state. It was something, it was really a traumatic experience. So, and then even the people you'd meet, like we felt going in the grocery store, I felt like I had PTSD afterwards, for months afterwards, or when it would rain. And it was kind of like you had a kinship because you'd see people go, where were you during the storm? How'd you do? And I knew many people who, at my children's schools, at my son's, about 100 families had flooded out of their homes. And I was in a group that I knit, it's kind of, my husband laughs that I knit, but we made blankets for people who were in the hospital. And so I had made some for people who were flooded from the home. And one woman, I didn't know them, we just make them. And she came to me crying because she said she'd cuddle up with that blanket, she and her family, because a lot of people, they lived in the upstairs, their house was 2-story. So they had to stay upstairs because the whole home had been flooded. So it was a really, it was an experience to remember, that's for sure.
And when you're 11 books in, how far out do you plan? Do you plan out 2 books, 1 book? Do you have an ending ever in mind?
Well, I really had thought that I might end at book 10, but the children kept begging for another book. And so, yeah, that really, even when I would do school visits, I'd say, yeah, I'm planning probably book 10 will be the end. And then people just kept begging and saying, oh, this has got my child reading and this has got him or her excited. So it makes me want to continue, but I'm not sure how much longer, maybe a couple of more books, we'll see. But I still keep coming up with the ideas. So I'm grateful that my little muse has allowed me to continue on and keep coming up with different scenarios.
It seems like you're able to process lots of different aspects of your life through this lens. Are we going to see Sophie at some point take on quarantine?
I don't know. Maybe right now, someone had asked me about that, or so they said, oh, you should put some mask on your social media. I'm not feeling that right now. Maybe I don't even want to write about it. And in fact, I had been writing on a different book that I was with a different character, and the year I had changed it. It had been 2020 and I changed it to 2019 because I don't even want to write about that right now, but maybe sometime in the future, who knows?
We don't even want to acknowledge the year happened.
I guess it's too fresh or too raw or something. I just don't want to write about that or have them in mass in school right now.
The tricky thing I would think right now is anything we might write about quarantine may yet seem trite because we have no idea still how it's going to end.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's a great point. You're right, because we're still in the middle of it right now, so you don't know
I'm
what it.
optimistic, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
So we promised Halloween Spooktacular. Have you seen Bigfoot? What compelled you to write about Bigfoot and introduce Sophie to that fear?
My family watches that show Finding Bigfoot, and so they were watching it, and I've actually traveled a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. We traveled out west and we went through South Dakota, and they'd have all these statues with Bigfoot and things like that. So I just thought that might be interesting, and I wanted to have a book that came out around Halloween time, and I thought that would be pretty neat to have her afraid of Bigfoot or have them. And I also wanted to write a book. This book has them going, it's called Class Retreat, and they go to camp. So I wanted them to have that camping experience. And so I thought that would be cool to incorporate the Bigfoot in there and add a little fun and adventure.
Are you and your family big campers?
No, I've never been camping, but I actually wouldn't mind trying to do that because I went kicking and screaming on the road trip we took out west. I did not want to go do that. And I actually ended up loving it. It was so beautiful. And we went through Yellowstone. So if I could I wouldn't mind camping there. And if I could do that, I actually might do that. But I've never been camping before. I like being outside, but I don't sleeping out in a tent isn't something that I've ever wanted to do. But my husband likes that kind of thing. And again, I loved our road trip. I did not want to do that at all. And that was just so fun. So I might do that one day.
Well, that might be the perfect vacation for these quarantine times.
Right. Because we've talked about that with the quarantine times. And I guess I'm kind of a prissy type person, but I love outdoors, being and seeing nature and just seeing beauty, natural beauty. So I would love to do that one day. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I talked to Annie Sullivan, who went diving with great white sharks. I
Ooh.
don't think the episode will have aired when this one comes out, but I chatted with Gene Neary recently, and he was telling me about going around his house looking for alligators. Like, what are you guys doing? We're writers. We're supposed to stay home and safe with our cats and our book.
I love being outside with my book because even this with quarantine, we live about 40 minutes from the Gulf of Mexico or Galveston. And so we found there's this beach that's like a 45-minute drive from my house. And my husband and I have been going there, just sitting on the beach. It's wonderful. And I had a new book by Kwame Alexander, Becoming Muhammad Ali. And I read my book out on the beach, and I just love being out in the great outdoors.
Well, then maybe camping might work out. Yeah, well, fingers crossed for you.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, let's talk a bit about publishing, because, of course, you're independently published. I know that you, like me, are a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. Was that before you started publishing or after that you joined up with them?
Yeah, it was shortly after, but I met a Canadian author who lived in my community. She saw me on social media, and we met up, and I started doing she called them write-ins, and we'd meet at some little coffee shop with some other writers. And she gave me a ticket to an SCBWI conference. Someone couldn't go, so I was privileged to go, and just loved it. And met some authors that I have been following that are based here in Houston. And so I just signed right up. After that, I just got so much out of that conference.
Were you bumping into previous guest Kathy Appelt?
I haven't met her. She's never been at the meeting when I've gone there. But Crystal Allen was there. Are you familiar with her? She wrote The Magnificent Maya Tibbs, and she's coming out with a new book coming out. She was there, and Vanessa Brantley Newton, the illustrator, was one of the speakers there. And Linda Sue Park was the keynote speaker. Are you familiar with her?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so we got to meet her. So that was just wonderful. And then just the learnings, even during the time of quarantine, with all those little virtual events they've had and speakers, I've just gotten so much out of that. So I'm happy to be part of that group. And then they also have critique groups and things like that.
Have you found much benefit from those?
I've gone to, I'm not in an established group now. I had one group I met with a couple times, and then another one. And I've had a hard time finding groups that met at times that were convenient for me. But the times I've gone, I have found them to be a benefit. And I've done a couple of virtual critique groups with them during this pandemic time. So I find those to be pretty helpful. I need to get in a long-standing group. And that's what I want for even for new projects, because I feel like I'm kind of in a rhythm with my Sophie Washington, but I have a new character, a new book that I've been working on, and I would love to get tapped in with a critique group to help with that.
Anything you can reveal about that character now, or not yet?
Well, it's a male character, and then I'm bringing in some elements of magic and time travel. So that's a lot different than what I'm doing right now. So, and I've just been working on that. I'd like to try to pitch that to agents and things, but like you said, I don't know if you said that during the time of this interview, that's very time intensive as well. So I'm trying to balance and figure out what I'm going to do. But that's all I want to say about it. But it's different because the Sophie Washington books are realistic fiction, and that one has some magic and time travel and some different things going on. So that's a little bit more challenging for me.
I definitely want to talk about indie publishing, and I want to talk about all the marketing you've done, because you are, I believe, an indie publishing juggernaut.
Oh my goodness!
Was there ever a period where you were querying Sophie Washington, or were you always straight to independent?
I really went straight to independent because I wrote the first two before I got in SCBWI. So I really didn't know what to do at that when I came out with Sophie Washington. Looking back, maybe I would have queried it. I don't know. But I did not query that at all and just came out with it. And what else did you add? I can't remember what you just said.
Oh, I'm famous for my questions that no one can answer. So straight to independent. Did you put down some kind of marketing plan in advance? You said, this is what I'm going to do, or did you just get going? And
really, what really helped me is that I did not have a clear marketing plan. I kind of had a rough draft of what I want to do. But starting out, I just started going to all these events. So of course you can't do that right now, but I attribute that to a lot of my success because I went to the National Black Book Festival here in Houston. That was my first event. And then my community is pretty big. So we have really nice events in my community, and it's a big family suburb here in Houston. So I had a lot of community support for my books because basically Sophie lives in my community. So when the kids would read the books, they would relate to a lot that was going on. And even going to the rodeo, there's something here called mutton busting, where you get on a sheep, like little kids get on a sheep with a helmet on. And so a lot of the kids around here have actually done this kind of, the things that are going on. So they really supported me in my community. And then they would share things on social media. So I think I had a lot of growth just by going to many, many events. I was constantly at farmers markets, festivals and things. And because I'm in a big city, people just started hearing about the book. I met a lot of teachers and librarians who bought books, took them back to their schools. And then I got press in the Houston Chronicle. I did pitch them, but I really just kind of, and also I do have an MBA and a marketing concentration. So I didn't have a straight marketing plan, but it was kind of a loose plan of what I wanted to do starting out but it was mainly focused on events. And then I did some advertisement later with different ebook promo sites and things like that.
Well, for all the would-be indie publisher or would-be indie publishing authors who are listening, who are considering it, I know that this is lessening every year, but there can be a thing where you'll go maybe even just to a bookstore and say, hey, I'd like to hold an event here. And they, you get that, when I'm looking, the nose goes up a bit in indie publish day. So how did you overcome that? And how did you pick out specific events that would be a good venue for you and Sophie?
Well, a lot of them were more community-based events. They weren't book events. But I did go to the Texas Book Festival as well. But what happened, and I got Kirkus reviews for a couple of my books, Hurricane and The Gamer. So I had positive reviews. And actually, Hurricane was included in one of their magazines. And only like 10% of the indie books are chosen for that. So that gave me a little more credibility with the librarians and things. So I mean, they would do that because I went in one bookstore. Now here's a really funny story. Because one of my local bookstores, they did carry my book on consignment for a time. And then they said, they sent it back to me after a while. But I went there to an event with, for Hair Love, the author of Hair Love, and the illustrator. And so while I was in line, and it was wonderful. It was so neat to meet him. It was before he won the Oscar for Hair Love. And so for the Hair Love short, one of the little girls in line said, oh, you wrote Sophie Washington. Oh, and then she had my book and wanted me to sign it. So that was just such a great time. But
yeah, hire her, get her to follow you around.
Yeah, come on. But I mean, it hasn't been easy, and then the bad part, like I told you before we started filming, is I had just gotten accepted into Barnes and Noble, and then they were going to let me do an event there. And then of course the pandemic came, but it's really kind of like just beating on that door and continuing to do that until they let you in. I've had plenty of rejection, but any author, whether you're traditionally published or independently published, is going to have that rejection. So I really just believed in my book. I knew that children enjoyed them and that they were learning from them. They were happy with the story and it was encouraging them to read. So I just would not stop going back. I mean, I have been rejected from some and I just would go back. Really, that's what. And then eventually when they would see that I was selling or whatever, they would let me in.
So if I'm a snooty venue owner that says, oh, not our sort or sport, how would you pursue me? How would you convince me to let you come and present at the event?
But I've never really been turned down from an actual event. I don't think that I've gone to. It's been more bookstores that I wanted to carry the book.
Oh, that's interesting. So the events are fine. It's just it's the bookstores. Yeah,
because all the events I went to different little community events. I really was never turned down from any. And a lot of times I'd be the only book. These weren't purely bookish events. These were like festivals and things like that. And then, of course, at the Texas Book Festival, I was not a presenter. I was in the exhibition hall with the exhibitors. So I wasn't a presenter there. But then I've tried to get in one in Kentucky and they did not accept my book, but I just keep trying. I don't think even all traditionally published authors are accepted to everything.
No, unfortunately, if you're an author at any level and however you publish, whatever you've written about, somebody somewhere will make you feel bad about it. That's just the name of the game.
Yeah. But I guess it's been a lot of work, but it's a labor of love and I just enjoy what I'm doing and I'm happy with my books and characters and that keeps me going. through the ups and downs that all writers face. And I think just going to SCBWI meetings, I don't get to all of them, but even when I'm looking at the virtual events, learning, I just feel like those are my people, the writers, and I'm happy in that environment. So that encourages me to continue as well.
So here, and I'm going to get a little bit into the weeds because you know I told you before you came on here that the whole point of this was for me to pick your brain and learn your secrets so I can go and do likewise. So for these in-person events, when I've done them, I've grown a little bit frustrated because, you know, I might sell 20, 30, 50 books. In person, that's a tremendous day for in person, but then I'll come home and I'll check my online numbers. And while I was there working my butt off to sell those books, passively, I've been beating that number without doing anything. Oh, I could have been home playing PlayStation. So what was I doing with my afternoon? So how do you make those festivals work for you? How do you get people's attention to make that worth that commitment of your time?
Well, for me, a lot of times when I would go, I would be meeting teachers and librarians. So it was worth it for me because those connections got me entrees into schools and different things. Like from one, I met one librarian, and then she bought a set of my books. She bought several sets, and then I had the school visit, and I'm getting paid for that. So, and that was happening quite a bit. Or I would meet bloggers and different people here who would feature me, you know, and write about my books. And even one time I went to one event and I only sold 88 books, and I was there from like 9 to 4. That was one of the worst events like that. But I met someone from a children's center. She had a video recorded of the children. She had bought some books of them reading my books. It was all over the internet. So all of those events for me, they were beneficial really from the connections that I made. I think though that was the best part of them. So they were really beneficial. And then at home, I mean, I don't know how many you sell then passively. I would sell, but for me, it was, and even the interaction with the readers and things. And I got a lot, I take pictures of some of my readers with their parent permission. So those are promotional materials for me that I can use on the internet, because a lot of my sales are coming from, you know, different parts just to get that visibility. So for me, they really were worth it. And then I have one little market that is in my neighborhood. Literally, it's maybe 4 or 5 miles away. So for me, it wasn't that difficult to go put up my stand for a little bit on a Saturday, be there 3 hours and come home. So it wasn't, and I could have my kids help. So they really,
that is important.
yeah, those things really helped me grow, I think, and got me my business growing.
So I assume when you go to an event like this, you're not sitting, you're not putting up your stand and your books and then sitting there staring at your phone or being into. How are you approaching people to make these connections that are working out so well?
And I do have a sales and marketing background. So, and I really love little kids. So it's like I'm the Pied Piper or something, or I don't know. The kids just come up and usually I'll have candy there or something. And I talk to them. I like to talk to them. I love little kids, and they come, the parents come, but I do stand. I don't sit. I usually stand and engage with the people that are coming back. What's that?
Well, I wrote down bribe with candy. Got it.
Yeah.
Why
good. Candy's good. That attracts them to my booth. They see the candy, they come by, and then I just start talking to them.
Why would standing be preferable to sitting?
I mean, you're just more welcoming. When you're sitting on the phone, they may think that you're busy or that you're doing something that you don't want to be bothered. So when you're looking up and looking out, it's attracting people to you. When you're standing on your feet, you're inviting them to come into your space. For all the introverts out there, you got to get out.
Are you
And
making friendly eye contact, or are you a little bit of a carnival barker? Hey, you fine person, come step up to the booth.
I don't say that. I may say hello, hey, how are you doing? I don't act like the people at the mall that are in the center calling you over, but I
Good.
do greet them and speak to them if they're coming, or make eye contact and maybe speak to them. And usually they'll see the books and they're attracted to the covers and the books, and they'll come up to my booth.
And of course, you've got Sophie Washington, Spelling Queen, is available for free to download, perma-free, right? Anytime anybody that's listening or watching this right now could be downloading their copy as we speak.
Yeah.
Why is that advantageous? Also, I remind the esteemed audience, Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees is available to download for free as well. What's the advantage of the perma-free book?
Well, that's like offering a sample of the book. Just like if you went in the grocery store and they have a sample of cheese or something, you try it and then you may want to buy it. So, if they hadn't heard of me or my books, then if they try that Queen of the Bee and enjoy it, that may encourage them to go ahead and purchase some of the other books in the series and get them hooked on into the series. So that's really the purpose of offering the perma-free book.
And then now that we are in quarantine for the foreseeable future, hopefully not too terribly long, how have you changed your approach for your newest launch?
I've been doing a lot more online marketing, and I'm planning a virtual party because I used to have, with my other books, a bakery had approached me and they wanted me to have an event there with them. So then I had a Christmas party because I have a Christmas book, and then a launch of a couple books. So we had planned my book, the 10th book, planned that. So I took it virtual and did a Facebook virtual event. So that was really fun because I got to meet and interact more with some of my little fans. And some of them are really diehard Sophie Washington fans. So they follow along with everything going on. They send me pictures of them with the books, and one of them's having a Sophie Washington birthday party coming up. So I'm really excited about that.
Are you going to be able to put in a virtual appearance or anything like that?
Well, I asked her mother. She said that they may be going out somewhere. I don't know where during quarantine, but I had some napkins and plates made that she bought with the character on them. So they're going to have those at the party. So that's going to be really fun. That will have taken place by the time this airs. And so that's been really cool because some of the girls and there are boys in the book as well, and boys enjoy reading them, but the main character is a little girl. And I've had quite a few dress up as the character and send me pictures. So that's been really cool.
Isn't that just the best and happiest thing? What is the best reader reaction to something you've written so far?
I'd say the birthday party, but then one with Hurricane, that was the first picture I ever got. And I actually remember feeling just kind of discouraged that day about something. Either I'm tired of doing, because of all the work involved. And a librarian sent me a picture of her. And on the cover of the book, Sophie has on a pink cowboy hat and a pink t-shirt that says Houston Strong. And she had that on, and I almost cried seeing that. Like, look this is something that I made. And, this child has identified with this, and she's dressed up in character. And that really makes me feel good to see that the kids are identifying with it. And even seeing letters from parents saying that their child who did not like to read is now reading, and seeing how excited they are keeps me going. And when you talk about the series going on, that kind of really encourages me to continue, because you don't make much money from this, and it is quite a bit of work. But I just feel so fulfilled seeing that I'm a small part of the kids' childhood in this way.
Well, if money was all that mattered, we'd all be Wall Street brokers, right?
That's right.
Why are we bothering with anything else?
Yeah.
So when you're talking with the kids, are you doing a little bit of research along the way? Like, what would you like to see Sophie do next? What would interest you? What would a title be that would make you purchase a book?
Yeah, I do ask them sometimes, what do you think Sophie should do? But a lot of times I get ideas from that actually from my own kids. And I do read quite a bit. I read a lot of children's book, middle grade fiction myself. But I'm trying to think if any of my topics have come from kids I've met. I'm looking at books here. Really, they haven't gotten, but I guess being around kids, that gives you inspiration for all kind of scenarios and things that happen in the book. But when I talk to them, I ask them about things that they like to read. So that may also inspire, my writing choices, I guess, how they're doing. And they tell me about things they're doing in school and what they're learning. I mean, I'm not talking to the kids individually, but maybe a few minutes because there's different people coming through.
But if they tell you that they love your book and they're reading also this book, then that's a book that gets added to your to-be-read pile.
Right. Sometimes, yeah. And just to find out, even when I was thinking about writing a book with a boy character, I know that a lot of the boys like books that are more action and adventure, and those are more appealing to them. So I guess I did during school visits and things, especially school visits, I usually talk about my author journey and my writing process, and sometimes do writing workshops and different things like that. But I ask them about books that they like and books they're reading. So yeah.
And what other than the visits and the in-person stuff, what have been your best methods for marketing the book?
I'd say social media has really helped. And then I have had some BookBub feature deals with my book. So that's helped get it out and, get more people seeing it, get them higher visibility. But social media is a way that I market my books. And I think that really helped with me doing those events. When you asked about those, I would keep posting pictures from the events. And so then it gets more people seeing my books. And then even people like to see their kids in these pictures with book too. So they'd be happy, they'd be posting them, and then more and more people would learn about the books. So I guess those are my secrets to my success. You're trying to find I guess that, helped me grow, but also people like the books.
That is a key.
They enjoy them, so they were sharing them as well. And I've even been blessed to have some parents who've really been champions for my book, because one mother in Dallas, her son enjoyed them, and she's had him do readings of them during quarantine. And then she started a homeschool cooperative because she homeschooled her children. And so she's had that included as part of the curriculum. My books is included in whatever they're studying. So I've been fortunate to have different parents who've really enjoyed these books as well and taken them on.
You've got a lot of fantastic reviews as well. Has that just been organic, or have you been seeking those out? I know obviously you sought out the Quercus reviews.
In the beginning, that is a good point you make. In the beginning, I really was aggressively getting reviews from bloggers and things. But then once I made Queen of the Bee, the first book in the series, perma-free, I've been getting reviews. I haven't had to do anything. And then when I got BookBub deals, I've had BookBubs on 3 or 4 of the books. So once I've had those, I've had no trouble with reviews. I've always had reviews. And I also do Goodreads giveaways. So with each launch, I'll do a Goodread giveaway to get initial reviews when I'm starting.
So student audience is listening and like, oh my gosh, this sounds like a lot of work. And obviously, Tonya Duncan Ellis is a superwoman, not an issue for her. But what does your writing day look like? Because of course you've got to keep the books coming, in addition to marketing and everything else.
Well, when I'm working on a project, I usually get up about 5:30, 6, and write 2 or 3 hours. I can do that. And then I'll write a little in the evening. So I'll write maybe 3 or 4 hours a day when I'm working on the book. And it's scattered in whenever I can fit things. I have to get up early to do, have time to do some concentrated writing. And then with marketing things, I'll do that. I really don't watch TV or anything. So I do, but it will be movies or something. I don't daily just sit, or I'll sit with my family and I'll be doing something on my books while I'm sitting there. So that's how I have time to get that done, some of the marketing things.
Is it just all fun for you, or have you just got single vision, you will do this?
It is pretty fun. Like, I love those events. Now, of course, I don't do them. I love interacting with the fans, and I love even the marketing. I like coming up with different ideas and having things out. So I would have to love doing this to do this, because it is a lot of work. So when I'm thinking about it, most of the aspects of it I do like. You know, the job, there's ups and downs for any, I'm not saying it's always rainbows and sunshine, but I really love all the things that I'm doing right now with this.
What's your least favorite thing about it?
The least favorite thing about it would be, for me as an indie author, I have to, and with all these books, I've got to keep, like with my book descriptions and things like that, I've got to update them when new books come. And I do formatting for my ebooks. So that can be really tedious. And I could pay someone to do that, but then I like having that control of some things. But some of those kind of tasks, administrative type things, can be really tedious. And there's always, because I'm a small business owner or authorpreneur, and there are different things that may go wrong with something on the computer system or whatever. There's always something. So those kind of things can be frustrating. Like, for example, the other day, my Instagram, and this shows my age or whatever, but I'll have my teenagers help me. Something changed. There was an update. And I'm like, oh no, I've got to post this about my new book coming out. I can't figure out what to do. And I spent, a couple of hours having to figure that out. I had to have them help me with that. So those kind of things as an independent author can be frustrating. And it's like, especially just the things the tasks that I have to do to get the books out here, like uploading them, formatting them, and things like that. Those are things that aren't my favorite things to do.
Do you have a vision in mind where, on this day I will have sold this many books and met this many people and won these awards, and on that day I'll lie triumphant on the field of battle, having won my war? Or have you already met that point and everything's gravy on top?
I don't know. I wouldn't mind having a book traditionally published, just for my own, just to feel like it was done. So that's kind of a goal of mine. I'm actually been thinking about trying my hand at a picture book, but then that's going to take time for me to learn, because my kids are older. I don't really read picture books, so I'd have to get into reading a lot more than. But I like poetry and verse, so I may try my hand at that in the coming year. That's a goal that I've started setting for myself. But
go ahead.
Right now, I haven't thought about an end to it. But that's a good point you're making, because how long can I continue doing this? And as more and more books come, it is a lot to keep all this going.
I assume indefinitely. I just didn't know if there was a final end point in mind where you'd say, okay, well, I get to that point and then it's time to take up bobsledding or something.
I don't know. I really love what I'm doing. This is a labor of love. I love interacting with the kids, writing these books, bringing them joy through the story. So I'd like to continue as long as I can.
So what I'm hearing is forever. There is no end.
Yeah. So I mean, I would like to maybe come up with a different character series and with that. But I like Sophie too. So hey.
Obviously, I mean, you hopefully you didn't write 11 books about her.
Yeah.
But as you were telling me, you're formatting your own ebooks. I assume you're formatting the paperbacks. You have total control with traditional publishing. A book not drive you a little bit nuts to see that control and let somebody else interpret your work?
I do wonder about that because when I started out on the first book, I did have like a hybrid company doing some things, and I was very frustrated because it would take them forever to get things done. I couldn't get things the way I wanted them. So I do wonder about that. So I really don't know, but I've never tried it. So how would I know? Like I told you before the interview started formally, I've seen people get these huge deals and six-figure deals. So hey, if I got that, I may not mind if they took a little of the control. If I got a big fat check on one of the books, hey, it may be okay.
Cry yourself to sleep on your pile of money. Sure. Tonya Duncan Ellis, have you ever seen a flying saucer and or a ghost or other supernatural being for a Halloween spooktacular?
That's a good question. I was thinking about that when I saw some of your other episodes, and no, I have not ever seen a ghost or a flying saucer. I know it's Halloween. I've seen kids dressed as ghosts, and I'll probably see some on Halloween night, but I haven't seen any in actuality that I knew were real ghosts.
Well, I'm wishing that experience upon you because then I know we're going to get a fantastic Sophie Washington interpretation of that experience, and that's going to be a wonderful book.
Yeah.
I'm watching our time fly by. I wanted to ask just a little bit about a long series, and then maybe we'll call it a night. Would that be comfortable still?
Sure.
Okay, I always want to end while we're having fun. I don't want this to get to the point where it's, oh, please stop. So before we get there, I want to make sure we have. But I wanted to ask, with these books, you said each one's about 100 pages. The chapters, as I went through them, all end at about the same spot. Do you have some specific rules or a formula you've created? Obviously, each story has its own separate demands and different things that you're trying to express. But do you have some rigid rules for how you produce a Sophie Washington book?
I actually do. I never thought of it as rigid as that way when you said, but I write them when I'm writing in Scrivener. They're about 1,000 words each per chapter, and they're all 20 chapters, 20 or 21. So I always kind of make them in that framework. And then I'm not really a plot, with plotter and pantser. I guess I'm more of a pantser, but I do have a loose outline for each book. So when I come up with the idea, I'll make headings for most of the chapters of what they're going to be about. And then I'll write, and they're about 1,000 words for each chapter.
So you've got a decent idea how you're going to end them.
Yes. But sometimes I don't know the ending when I start a book. I don't always know the ending, but I know they're going to be within that framework. I try to keep them within that framework because that's what those readers are expecting. They want it to be that, they're usually that length, and that's kind of meets their little expectation. And then most of the books around that are like that I've modeled them after, they're kind of around that length in that way.
I'll make this my final question for you is always some variation. If you could go back to earlier in your career when you were starting on this and give yourself some advice that would have made things easier for you and might make things easier for everyone listening, thinking about becoming the next Tonya Duncan Ellis, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Make it easier. Just that, you keep working hard. There's going to be ups and downs, but each day will have a new success, a new triumph, or new, even if things seem bad, that little setback is going to push you to another comeback, and it just keep pushing along towards those goals. So that's what I would tell. Because sometimes when some bad things may happen, you may feel like, oh, this is just the worst thing ever. But that setback can help move you forward and make you even stronger.
Where can an esteemed audience find you online, find more information about your books, follow you on Twitter, all that good stuff?
They can find me on my website at TonyaDuncanEllis.com and on Instagram and Facebook at Tonya Ellis Books and on Twitter at Tonya D. Ellis.
And I hope everybody seeks you out and follows you immediately. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thanks again for making the time and for sharing your secrets. I'm going to copy them all.
Well, thank you, Rob, for having me. I appreciate it and really admire your show. And I got to check out some more of the Banneker Bones series. Check out some of your books.
We'll come back when the new series hits, and we'll have all kinds of new stuff to talk about.
Okay, yes, I'm excited.
And esteemed audience, as always, for more information about what's going on with me, the show, interviews with hundreds of thousands of literary agents, editors, authors, publishing professionals, folks I know that you would enjoy reading, head to middlegradeninja.com. Download your free copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees. Get your free copy of Sophia Washington. We're giving these books away, people. Get your free copies. And God willing, and I'm alive. I'll see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.